All right, we are live. Hopefully, we're showing live in Berlin as well. This is Jess, your host of the Product Guild here with Super Team, and I'm live with Phil Hedayatnia, as you all know, from Airfoil Studios. We're going to do a live roast of some of your Berlin Build Station projects. And as you can tell, I'm also not at home. I am with my bachelor students. We're going to make them all say hello, the ones that showed up today. Hello, Berlin. These are my UX UI design students. They're in their last day of the semester working on their finals. So they're also excited to see what Phil does in terms of roasting our participants here. Some of the Berlin guys are coming in from upstage. I'm going to add them in now. I see Berlin. Hey, Berlin. I'm going to mute you real quick, Bloody. Unless you want to introduce the craziness down there in Build Station for us. No. Okay. We're going to mute Bloody. And Phil, I'm going to turn it over to you now. Hey, Jess number 2. Phil's got control of the spreadsheet. He's going to pull them up. We're going to roast some projects and get on that. So Phil, the stage is yours.
Awesome. Really excited to do this. And with multiple audiences this time, which is pretty cool. So maybe a little bit of context to me before we dive in. I'm Phil. I'm the co-founder of a company called Airfoil, which is a product design, branding and engineering firm focused in the Web3 space. I don't know if I've disappeared from the. Okay, I'm still there. Okay, I think this works now. Yes, great. And I've been building Airfoil and working with teams in crypto for the past 5 years. But actually, especially given that I know that some of the audience today are members of Super Team Germany that are participating in the breakout hackathon, but also some of you are just learning design, right? And in just this class, which is awesome, is maybe underscoring first that really nothing that I'm going to talk about today is specific to crypto. Like the general principle that we ought to treat design as an act of communication and work backwards from what's in people's heads when they hit the page, what context do they need to get, what is kind of the why statement behind the what of what you're building, how can we find kind of an intrinsically good value to hinge copywriting and messaging around, so that things make sense to users who come to the page, they understand that products are for them. These are all things that apply to any type of product, any type of industry. The specific tactics you use may differ depending on the industry that you're in, but it doesn't change the process and it doesn't change the importance of design thinking throughout that process. So I'm hoping that for everybody here, there's something you can take away. So what I typically like to do when we do these sort of sessions is before I have full context on what the product actually is, if we've got a landing page to work with, I try my best to describe it from my perspective as a new user. And then once I've kind of gone through that period of time, then we come back and say, okay, explain to me a little bit clearer, like what you do. And then we can talk more tactically about like what can be changed and what can be improved to improve the outcomes there. So I'm going to try to do that in this case. I've got a spreadsheet up that Jess sent over to me that has a list of the projects that have applied to be roasted today. And so we have 5 projects we're going to get through: Rampacash, Reka Finance, Mato, Hi Mambo, and Zelio. And so let's start with the first one, which is Rampacash, which context that I got is that it's something around making remittances easier on chain. So I got the project URL. In this testnet, you need to connect a wallet to proceed. I may get stuck. We'll see. Let me start sharing my screen and go from there. So
yeah, and Phil, just to give you a little bit of insight as well with my students, this class is actually web analytics and web design. So we do 5 weeks of data analytics and looking at web design, and then talking about how to pull KPIs and good CTAs into the design as well. So I think that is also something you'll talk about today in terms of kind of that design flow. Like if you want to make a reservation, for example, what would be the best way on the flow, things like that as well. So just a little extra insight. Because I know the guys are tired of me from last week telling them, well, what's your main CTA and what's your main KPI? So, and if they hear, fair warning, if they hear me say above the fold one more time, they'll scream. So maybe we take that out for today.
No, that's awesome though. That's really awesome, especially because, and this is, I'll do a brief digression on this and get back on topic. But one pet peeve that I have in crypto a lot of the time is that we'll have protocols that don't even have landing pages at all, right? Because there's a lot of protocols that you go to and they're like, well, we want to make it as simple as possible to use the application. So we're just going to throw people directly in. And if they have questions, we can send them to a help center or something like that. And that is just like not only very wrong, but it's also, it's part of the reason I think that a lot of people think crypto isn't for them, because they go to these sites and they're indecipherable. And then they kind of just give up and click away and don't really understand it. It isn't, I think this is based on kind of a fundamental misunderstanding of like what is quote unquote good design. Like in the early days of Palm, back when Palm PDAs were very popular, before the smartphone. Palm had a design rule that I've since seen pop up in like design workshops and things like that. The idea that you should make it so every core action is no more than 3 taps away. And I think that's stuck in a lot of people's heads. And they're like, okay, that's what good design is. Good design is everything within 3 clicks. And I cannot emphasize enough how that is not true. Like, what is way more important is to find ways to reduce the amount of things on every given step, not to reduce the number of steps. You reduce the number of decisions somebody needs to make at once. You don't necessarily need to reduce the number of decisions. One of my favorite examples in crypto of this is most of the time, there's a wallet called Family. And okay if I take a couple minutes. I just
fill us with your knowledge. I mean, my students are tuned in. I know Build Station is turned in, and this is definitely going to help them. So give us a good example before you get into the roast too, and we're here for it.
Yes, I don't know if I'm going to be able to quickly bring this example visually, but Family Wallet is an Ethereum wallet that I'm a big fan of. But one of the reasons I'm a big fan of it is because of how they handle onboarding. I think they've got the best onboarding of any wallet. I do actually have the video and I can share. There's one piece of it. So one essential part of the onboarding process for any wallet, right, is entering in a seed phrase if you have an existing wallet. And typically, when you do that in a wallet like Phantom or MetaMask, it brings you up a screen. And on that screen, it has a bunch of different boxes that you paste your seed phrase into to recover a wallet that's in a different application. And then it also has a button, and that button says, or paste your seed phrase, right? Because you might have copied and pasted it from the other wallet and want to put it in. And so if we were to follow Palm's rule of keep everything to as few clicks as possible, that's the best possible interface, because it means that if you want to paste in the seed phrase, you can do that. If you want to type in the seed phrase, you can do that. It's all on one screen, and then there's a button that says continue, and you just go, right? It's as condensed as possible. But it's also really difficult to understand. There's so many different things to click on one page. You might have like literally 26, 27 different buttons and fields that you can perceive at one time. And that leads to that overall feeling that, hey, this is hard, this is tricky. So I'll show you the example of Family, because I think it's really great. This is from a slide deck, so I'm just gonna share my screen here. Let me play what their wallet flow looks like. So you click import, and then it asks you, how would you like to import? Do you want to use a secret phrase? Do you want to use a private key? Like, make your choice. Well, then I choose a secret phrase. And then it says, do you want to paste or do you want to input manually? If you want to paste, you click paste and you're done. If you want to input manually, then you go to a different screen. So they didn't do it the condensed way of having everything in one place. They took every individual decision you have to make and they split it into a new step in the flow. But it means that every individual step feels really easy because it's a simple decision every time, as opposed to tons of different decisions you can make. Even better, they don't show you every box you can fill in at one time. They show you one box at one time. When you're done typing it, they may continue green. When you're done typing the next one, they may continue green. So each and every time they're focusing your attention in only the one thing you have to put your attention to at that given period of time. The result is this flow feels easy. But if I compare that even to Phantom's onboarding, I would argue that Phantom's onboarding, which is only 2 screens to do what took like 5 clicks, but this is the one that when we've done user tests to compare different wallets' performance, Family comes out on top almost every time because of stuff like this. So one key example I wanted to run through before we kind of dive into things a little more.
Awesome, cool. Let's go into roasting some of these projects. And I have to tell you, Phil, one of my students is actually the designer on one of the projects. So I'm excited. I'm not going to tell you which one yet, but we'll see what happens.
Okay, we'll find out. Awesome. I'll share my screen. Let's dive into first I'll just go here. So we've got this list of projects to roast here. We're going to start off with Rampa Cash by Juan Betancourt, who's Colombian, also.
Yes. Hi, Phil. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
I appreciate you reviewing my app.
For sure. Let's dive into it. So first thing, I would assume that this is just like there's no landing page yet because this is still just like in actively in the works, right? So for now, it's really just to demo the functionality. So I click try demo account. I would assume as well that this is probably something optimized for mobile. So what I'm going to do
is optimized for mobile. For mobile is on the browser looks a bit odd, but yeah,
that's okay. We'll put it in a bit skinnier so that it's a bit clearer. So I enter the application for the first time, and the first thing that I think is I don't know what this is. And especially given that we you established in kind of the beginning that this is like something around remittances. When I see this, as somebody who is a user of both Cast and Red.Pay, I think immediately this is a crypto card. But if I wasn't a user of those 2 products, I'm not sure I would know what this is initially. I see that there's something over here that I guess I can click left and right, but it doesn't look like the click area is large enough for mobile devices. So typically mobile devices, you want to have at least 24 by 24. This is not even a square. It's 26 by 44, but I think it's too close to the side of it. So it would feel a little bit difficult to tap. Oh, this switches me to euros. This switches me to Sol. Although I don't know why the logo is that.
Yeah, the rendering. I have a problem with the rendering in there, but I have to fix that.
This is the other thing is why is it so hidden? Like what I can select. Like I basically won't know that there's the ability to have multiple balances unless I happen to click this, and it's very possible I won't. But you've got a bunch of things that are battling for attention at once. You've got this bold card with the balance, and then you've got 3 actions that each use different colors. And so they're all fighting for my attention. Like when I see a screen like this, what I see is I see 4 things that are yelling out at me, pay attention to me first. And I've got to make a decision about which one do I perceive. And every interface, every page should have a primary action. Even something like a dashboard. Like one example that I frequently give is that of Coinbase. When you enter Coinbase's dashboard, there's only one button on the entire page that is filled in and bold blue, and that is the button to buy and sell. There's also a button to do send and receive. There's also a button to check your balance, but Coinbase is an exchange. The primary thing they want you to do is buy and sell. At the very least, they want you to first look at that button before you decide to look at anything else. The other thing here is when you've got every time that you make a decision around color, you are assigning meaning to that decision. And so every time something is the same, what you are saying to the user is this thing is the same as this other thing in a key way. Every time that something is different, you are saying to the user, pay attention, this is different than another thing in a key way. So what do I mean by that? Well, we've established a pattern here, which is when I see a card and that card has a color, that colored card indicates to me that this thing is clickable. So if I click send, I go to send, right? But if I click this, I don't go anywhere. If I click USD coin balance, I don't go anywhere. So even though it's similar styling to what's there below, I can't interact with it. I can't even like swipe on it. Maybe I can on mobile, but probably not. And and then it says not connected. I'm not sure what that means. So that's, I think, like an issue there. Like I would say that if we wanted to show balance, right, it might be nice to have a nice balance graph or something like that. But it would make more sense to take this entire section, take the background out of it entirely. And then maybe when you're on USDC, like the thing is, this alone is a good enough indicator to me. Sorry, I've got to like keep pulling this out. But this is an indicator to me that I'm in USDC. Or maybe what we do is we assign a very slight teal background to this, like at maybe 20% opacity. That way, I can see when I'm in USDC, maybe the background of this entire section becomes teal somewhat. So I can tell that I'm in the USDC mode, but then these buttons still look totally distinct from that as well. When I get into recent activity, so I can see these different items. I mean, this is pretty straightforward, I think. I can see the card information, show card details. This is also pretty straightforward. Freeze card settings. I think one issue is that I probably don't know what's behind card settings, and that probably
I haven't yet. Working on it.
But I think it's also that I don't know the difference between card settings and settings. Like, why are there two settings? So I think like this also comes back to the copywriting of items, right? So freeze card might be one important item, but card settings, let's assume that it, that enables you to manage security functionality on a per card basis. Like I would say be more descriptive than that in these cases. The other thing is the card details, when they show like this, the hierarchy is off. So when I say the hierarchy is off, you have a control here, show. And when I click it, it jumps. So immediately I'm like, whoa, like why is it jumping, right? But also there's a spacing between this and this. And the spacing between show card details and this section is the same as the spacing between recent transactions in this section. So basically, it doesn't create any association between this button and this, because this affects the stuff above and below it. This affects only the thing below it. So the hierarchy as a result is a little bit off. Now, I'm being a bit nitpicky. I think most people would be able to figure this out. I don't think that they'd get tripped up here and be like, man, I have no idea how to use this thing. But that's the sort of stuff that can contribute to a feeling of this feeling like super polished product versus not. You've got the ability to send, recipient address. The advice that I would provide here is that if the recipient address is a crypto address, there's a lot of little details here that it might be helpful to include to help, one, flag if somebody is using the wrong chain, because this happens all the time.
Yeah,
we've centralized exchange products, and especially if we're talking about emerging markets, like I'm in Malaysia right now, but frequently in Vietnam. Tron is still really popular in a lot of those markets, and I've seen people put in Tron addresses into Solana apps before and then lose money. So that's a thing to work on. But I guess what I would say is, for send, I don't expect to see recent activity. Okay. If the purpose of send is to send stuff, then I should really only see the ability to send stuff. I shouldn't see the send button even highlighted until I've entered something in. You should focus my attention. Think about the family example. Focus my attention on what I need to figure out first. When it comes to currency, if you've got those cool icons from the first screen, like use them again. Make that really, really clear here. When it comes to amount, the way this is done right now is that I can actually use my keyboard to go up in increments. Like I'm sure you've seen this before in other wallet applications, but a lot of them first ask you to define how much you want to send, and then ask you who do you want to send it to. It may sound like this is a simple enough flow that you might as well just have it on one screen, but oftentimes, especially if we're talking about something that's consumer friendly, if there are two actions, or in reality, three actions here, the user needs to make a decision about who they want to send a remittance to. They need to make a decision about what currency they want to use, and they want to make a decision about what amount of that currency they want to send. well, then maybe we can group currency choice and amount of currency into one step, recipient address into another step, and put send on whatever is the last step. It may sound unintuitive to say we're going to make that a two-step flow, but it'll make the entire interface feel a lot simpler. So I'm going to pause. I know that was a lot. That's kind of my immediate. But the last thing I'll say is, I know that before I said something about when you get to the landing page, it's a bit unclear what to do here, like what you can really do with this. And I understand that, like, for a user that's already in the product, like, they may not need additional context. But I think it's really important that whether this is done via a splash screen in the product or whether it's done via a landing page, that you have some way to articulate to people why this is better for them and how it's like, and some theme around like how their experience with money will improve by sending remittances digitally versus using fiat.
Fine.
I'll pause there. But thank you very much.
Have a landing page. You can have a look quickly on that. Rampa.cash.
Yes, please. Rampa.cash.
Rampa.cash, and just a quick mate.
Yeah, and I want to chime in that we had a huge discussion on colors so far and how you want to see colors and all of that. And then the settings, we had a huge discussion on that yesterday as well. So that was interesting that got picked up. That was really great, though, some of the side information on there in terms of flows of wallets. And I know that was probably really helpful for a lot of people. So thank you, Phil. While you're pulling up the landing,
those are amazing feedbacks.
Yeah, and I just want to remind everyone who's watching at home, I see 83 people tuned in. You can ask questions in the comment section while they're doing this, and we'll try to pull those in when we can or answer them in the chat box while Phil is doing this. So don't be shy to put your questions in the chat box for us as well. Back to you, Phil.
Awesome. So I've actually tried to present it. Okay, now it's up. Send money globally, fast, secure, easy. I'll start by saying that, like, the clean design of the page, if the brand purpose, I'll start by saying what I think is done really well here. If the brand's purpose is to say this is the simplest way to just send money globally, fast, secure, and easily, then having a really basic, minimalist landing page with good typographic choices, and I would argue that, like, you know, using these font weights of Inter, for example, is great. Like, it's just straightforward. It's easy for me to, like, read and understand it. That's good, right? That actually feels like a coherent and cohesive kind of brand identity. I will nudge on this, though, because I think the problem is that too many protocols say this. And also a lot of them don't deliver. And so I feel like you may need to get a bit more specific on, like, helping to visualize, like, why this is better for people. I'll bring up one site that I think has done this pretty well. Yes. So this is a company actually that we backed called Parallax. And I'm just going to shift over to sharing this one. And this is what their landing page looks like right now. It's changed quite a lot over the years, actually. So this is my first time seeing this in a while. And it's also saying they're a different product. I mean, what they do is they help, like, freelancers accept USD and EUR payments in stable coins. And then they create this, like, a neobank style crypto asset backed account that they can use to accept payments and all that. But I think, like, there's some elements of the brand that I'll call out here, right? The only account you need for global work. What are they trying to emphasize? They're trying to emphasize the feeling of simplicity. They're trying to emphasize that, you know, that it shouldn't be hard to manage this stuff, that you should be able to benefit from global work without struggling to figure out how to accept payments. They then show a person. I might argue this is a little bit plain and a little bland, but ultimately showing a person that represents the people that they're actually building this for is really important. Withdraw effortlessly, no delays, no headaches, no hidden fees. They're really emphasizing just, like, this is really freaking easy. I bring this up because going back to, like, the Rampa landing page, I think that, like, identifying who your primary persona is that this is for, even if the product is really broad and of course could be used by anybody, at least narrow it down to 3. Make sure that your copywriting reflects those people. Make sure that the visuals that you have somehow show the pain point that they are facing. Whether it is through color choices or illustration or photography, your job is to figure out what is the pain point this is solving for your customer or user. Figure out what emotions are in their head about that. And then show them that on a page and basically say, is this you? Yes, then this product is for you. That's the way that I think about it. So
that sounds great.
Yeah. So when it comes to like user research, like this is a big reason that I like doing a lot of qualitative user research early and a lot of open-ended research. So mom test style, like tell me about a time when X happened to you. Tell me about a time, like get them to give you that exposition. Because when you can hear these stories from your users, you then start to get inspiration and start to weave it in. I'll show you one last example here of a site that I think is somewhat controversial because it's extremely copy heavy, but actually does convert quite well. This is the website for Basecamp, which is product management software. Their company has been around for over 20 years. And their website has a ton of copy and a ton of information, even has this section that it says the answer is yes. And then it lists all the different things you can do with it. But here's the thing, like what do they hinge their entire product around? The idea that if you are a company that uses a combination of Slack and Asana and Trello and Google Docs and Notion and all this stuff, you are pissed off because you're wrangling tools. You want to tear your hair out because of how much you have to juggle between tools. They express that in the illustrations. They say wrestling with projects. Remember I said before, you want to figure out what is that thing in their head and you want to say it back to them and say, is this you? Wrestling with projects. It doesn't have to be this hard. They haven't said how they're making it easier yet. They don't have to. They have to first say, I recognize and hear your problem. Now I will give you my solution. And their copywriting is, I think, just S tier. Like no matter what people think about the layout of the page, you wouldn't be here if the way you've been working was working. I want to put that in a museum as like one of my favorite lines of all time. It's great. So this is like refreshingly clear product management system. When you hear those 2 words, refreshingly clear, it not only shows that they understand your problem, but it starts to build confidence in the solution. It's time for Basecamp. Like you start to get excited, like, oh my God, this problem that I've been facing, like someone's about to solve it for me. I would argue that for what you're building, there are very similar lines that you can use because there are such real problems that people have with sending money. And if you can create visuals and copywriting that speak to the real world problems your key 3 personas have, that they recognize in the same words they would use to describe it to one another, you will look totally different than 95% of the companies in crypto in a good way.
Thank you for your feedback. Those are really nice feedbacks, really nice insights. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Awesome, man. Any questions on any of the feedback I just relayed?
No, everything very clear.
Okay, amazing.
Very much.
Good luck, man.
Amazing. We can go to the next one.
Who is next?
Who's next?
Next up, we have, let me go back and present this again. Next up, we have Reka Finance from Sven. Reka automates your crypto investing. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to dive. Let me see. There's not a landing page for this yet. Okay, so I'm just going to review this text first. Reka automates your crypto investing. It combines dollar cost averaging with real yield strategies, so every buy is instantly put to work. By the way, a quick tip on copywriting. A lot of times when I'm stepping through copywriting in sections like this, I will see somebody explain what they do, and then they'll say something like, so every buy is instantly put to work, right? Whatever you add in that section that says, so every buy is instantly put to work, whatever that section is where you reframe it, from what it is into how it impacts the user. Whatever that thing is, bring it up to the top, because that's the thing you should lead with, not the thing you should end with. Funny enough, I mean, years ago, I did, when I was in high school, I did speech and debate. And that's also why I don't know, I've been obsessed with like copywriting and messaging for such a long time. And there's a specific format in debate rounds that they call claim, warrant, data, impact. And what I would do when I was at lay tournaments, meaning tournaments like at the local level where you had judges that were a little bit less experienced, I will admit this, is I would take whatever was in the impact section at the end of an argument, and I would bring it up as the claim and try to pass it off as the claim itself, which would frustrate opponents, but it would work. And that really is just to say that people don't make rational decisions when they hit websites and landing pages. Like they look for things that resonate with them, they believe you, and then they believe the claims you make. They don't look at the evidence you provide and then logically determine, did the evidence match with the claim itself? No, first you signal that you get them and they should get you, and then you give them a bunch of ways in which this thing is going to help them in their life, and then you put the evidence beneath it on the page, and as long as they see the evidence exists, they just believe you, and they're like, great, we can move on. I know that sounds horrible, but like it realistically, when we do things like eye tracking studies on landing pages we design, I see how quickly people read, just like, oh, there's a testimonial section, scroll past it, and I'm like, man, there's so much good content there, but like I know no one's reading it, right? So that was kind of
I love that you just brought this up, Phil, because so much of the psychology does come down to the copy as well. And I think a lot of people forget that good design comes from predicting behaviors as well. I want to let you know with Reka, this is from Sven. He's not in today, but this is just a very, very quick wireframe that he has. And what he kind of wants to make sure, or just kind of ask, is that the flow matches and the general flow is there. So basically right now we have a menu wireframe, and then it just says like the elements will be here. So I think this one will be a pretty quick roast, and then we can move on to Matto. So maybe we can do 5 minutes on this and then dive a little bit deeper with Matto and Thomas, because theirs is really, really advanced.
Sounds good. Okay, so we get into the product itself. Let's see, go to account. I will connect a Phantom wallet. Create your first vault. Okay, so I'll give a couple pieces of feedback for things that are not really built yet in this, and so like I don't really have something to refer to, but would be really important. When we're talking about how do you actually design this page, right, the home page, a lot of people will have dashboards in these sorts of products. But in general, I try to encourage people to not do dashboards if they're not really needed to be done, because dashboards are always difficult because they always involve mashing together information from different portions of the app. That actually doesn't make your app feel easier to use. Having a really clear navigation bar that lists all the things the app does, and then having on each of those screens, you find the core action that navbar item represents, and you have only the things related to that item, is generally a better way to do it. So I say this because like maybe the home screen should be something showing like how your investments are doing, or basically the account screen in some way, or maybe it's the default, but I'm not sure home is even needed, right? It may be, but probably not would be my guess. When we get into the create new vault screen as well, so you can select the source token, say it's SOL, source amount, be 100 SOL, Jupe SOL. It'd be really, really great if you can bring in things like logos from each of the different, from Jupiter, from Inth, from Bonk, etc. Like bring all that in. It just makes it much easier. Also, try to use a dropdown that enables you to be able to type within that dropdown. It makes things a lot better. especially in desktop, the ability for me to just like type in Jupe and then hit return and then have it like set would be really, really great. I think in general, this is probably a page that you could split into a multi-step wizard flow as opposed to displaying entirely at once. And the other thing is, as you're thinking about designing the application, this is a general point that I hope will be helpful beyond this project as well. Whenever possible, try to design apps, not websites, because this is not a website. Like, it is not a site with the purpose of conveying information. It is an application that you use to accomplish an action. And so what I mean by that is, in an application like the web browser that this is in right now, you have the address bar at the top, you have the expand and minimize and all that stuff. That stuff, even if I scroll through the page, remains fixed. The same thing is true for most web apps that are designed really well, is you'll have the nav bar be pinned at the top all the time, always. And you might have a left column and a right column, and you scroll within those columns as opposed to scrolling through the page. Basically, there should be no page for me to scroll like this. There should only be a top or left-hand side navigation, maybe that remains fixed and static the entire time, and then there should be there should be specific panels that I can scroll between, but I can't scroll outside of the panels themselves. Okay, try to condense that a little bit more, but I hope that's helpful feedback. I think from here we should probably go to Mato.
Yeah, super helpful feedback, Bill, because I think sometimes we also tend to overlook the power of a wireframe and how much a wireframe can tell us about a flow or movement already before we go into the high fidelity prototype. So I know we're in this world where we kind of say, screw the wireframe quite a lot and go into high fidelity, and sometimes we need to. But if you're taking that step with the wireframe, learn from it before you move on to the next step for sure. Let me get Mato up here for you.
Perfect. Okay, I've got the Figma file here, and it'll open in a moment.
We also have a website if you want to look at it.
Oh, I'd love to. Actually, maybe let's start with that first if we can. What's the URL for Mato?
Mato.finance.
Mato.finance. Okay, like that animation immediately. The only thing is the logo is reminding me of Theranos a little bit.
Oh, what?
The logo is reminding me of it's reminding me of this a little bit. Maybe all things that can be improved. And the other thing is it's hard to kind of see the O because of the dark background behind it. Fairer trades, better outcomes, experience motto, and so this is superfluous. Like, get rid of this text. Like, if there's other ways that you can mention that it's a Solana DEX. If you literally just had like fairer trades, better outcomes, it would be, I think, much more effective at like conveying the let me just. Interesting that these are all individual items. Okay, I've deleted too much stuff. Anyway, fair trades, better outcomes. Just that could be good. I think that you probably do need to keep product visual or something like that here, though, so that they can connect that to something else. I mean, maybe like one of my go-to examples that I would provide here would be, I think the GTE team did a good job of this recently. You get to GTE, and before you really know what it is, I mean, they have down here the only end-to-end decentralized trading venue. Trade fast, win faster. Which is like, whoa. And I bring this up because it is a constant challenge. Like, I see what GTE did here as simply a different version of what we did with the Drift website in the early days. Like, we came up with the tagline, making DEXs the best way to trade. One of the challenges whenever we're talking about DEXs or DeFi is that basically every protocol says like cheaper, faster, better, right? There's a difference between cheaper, faster, better and trade fast, win faster though. And it's the word win. that word, that one change in the copy totally changes the way this is perceived. Where your ambition meets velocity, I think like crystallizes that the why behind GTE, it's not just about like cheaper, faster, better. It is, it's an exchange for the traders who want an edge. Like that's the persona that they're going after. And I think that's really brilliant. So if we're talking about fairer trades and better outcomes, the question I would pose is who wants fairer trades and better outcomes? And you could say everybody, and that would be fair, but there must be a subset of those people. There must be a persona that is a subset of those people that you can focus the copywriting on, so that it's really effective. The Solana Dex built for fair bot protected trading. Set your price and duration. Let Mato execute your trades continuously for better results. This is by the way, this is generally good copywriting, I will say, but it still feels too general, and I think you could narrow down a little bit more. Fairer trades, better outcomes. Like, if I'm going to nitpick it, I'm going to say that it might be a little bit too vague for me to understand the relationship between that and Mato. But maybe the problem here is just that I can't see the product or can't see any illustration in this hero section. Wait for it. Above the fold, that connects the why that you're expressing here, the importance of fairness, to what Mato is. That connection isn't there because I can't see it, right? So that may be something to improve here, but I think you're on the right track. Better trading prices, always on bot protection. Get better prices with continuous trade execution that minimizes market impact. I feel like this could be somewhat better visualized. That's the only thing, but at least that's clear. Like, I would rather layout-wise just throw me into some exposition. Like, give me a wall of text that I need to perceive. Like, I'll show you, this is a VAPI, which is one site that we worked on. Voice AI agents for developers, very straightforward. But then we have this section here. Teams of trailblazing startups or Fortune 500 companies deploy voice agents in the VAPI platform, the most configurable API to build leading voice AI products and scale phone operations. Once you've read this text, you know exactly what it is, right? And so, like, I almost feel like you need that here. Like, some of what you've given me in this doc here, like, kind of ought to be, like, give me a paragraph that lays out the story of, like, in the status quo, you know, you're not just trading against people, you're trading against sophisticated bots deployed by high frequency trading firms. You're not given a fair shot. With Mato, you can, something like that. And then I read that big text, and then I get it, and then I go into the rest of the page, and it'll make more sense from there. Because this just, I think font choice is part of it. I would not recommend this font because I think it's actually really hard. Which one is this? This is Clash Display. I think it's really hard to read. I think that, like, if instead of doing Clash Display, if I just went here and I just said we're going to do Inter, which is super boring, right? I already feel like I can read this a lot clearer than with Clash, even though Inter would be quite, like, it's not the most interesting way to a font to use. If you've got sections like this, like highlight, see your savings in real time, right? Boldface this as opposed to the rest. Give me a way to, instead of telling me basically, Phil, you must read all of this text to understand this section, find a way to pull out a couple keywords so that it's easier for me to skim and understand it. I mean, I do like the background illustration here. I think this is a really smart way to design this section. I love that you say ultra low fees in Solana, although I think you could go a little bit further on that. But in this case, trading on Mato is simple. I feel like this is a bit too vague. Set your duration should be bigger. Protected trading should be bigger. See your savings should be bigger. This is too close to this size. Like, these are good. These are good taglines. Make them bigger. Make them, like, much more in my face. Trading on Mato is simple is really, really big, but then it's hard to skim these sections because they look too visually similar to each other. Frequently asked questions. This is superfluous. I think that you could literally get rid of this text and just, like, make this a bit bigger. Okay, that's kind of, oh, the last thing is, one thing that is really missing from this page is any social proof, like any validation from protocols, from people in the space that support the project, investors, stuff like that. When you have stuff like that to highlight, definitely make sure that you do. Like a really great way to do this, I'm going to be absolutely tooting my own horn here, but this is from the Helios site that we worked on. We have this section here, like every single one of these sections that emphasizes a feature or a product line within Helios has the name of the product, copy, CTA, key takeaways, split up with check marks so they're really easy to skim. And then down here, trusted by, and then testimonials woven in. And I bring this out because like this is a really interesting way for you to potentially like take something that is a reason to use your protocol and back it up with social proof. So look for that social proof within the super teams, like within the community, get people to endorse key parts of Mato, and we go from there. I'm gonna speed run
on the website real quick. I just want to say I noticed just a couple things in terms of it feeling like there was a real strong blend of styles too. So it felt like there was a mix of neo-brutalism with some of the 3D art. But then when we scroll down and we get to the micro or the icons, if we go down just a little bit more here, the edge on it gave me a very kind of like 8-bit game style. So I just kind of felt pulled over in the branding all over the place too. So maybe just kind of clean that up a little bit and then make sure the tonality in the branding is so different from the header to the end and then to the FAQ box. So I couldn't really, like, overall the design is beautiful and I agree with changing the typeface, but I kind of picked up on those and I just wanted to throw that in there.
I think that's I totally agree with that. The other thing I would say is that you've got this like green highlight around the like nav bar, which also try to just like increase the blur radius here because it's not significant enough. And so as a result of it, it gets kind of distracting. Like amp the blur radius up a ton on the nav bar. But because you've got this green highlight around the nav bar, as opposed to just doing a nav bar that's pinned to the top and extends full width, the green highlight is kind of always screaming out at me as I go through the page, look at me, look at me, look at me. When I'm over here and I'm supposed to be reading this stuff has the same level of visual prominence as the nav bar. In fact, the nav bar has more visual prominence because the launch app button is so bold. So as I'm trying to pay attention to the rest of the page, my attention keeps getting brought back up to the nav bar. Right now that I've got that over the text, this nav bar is substantially lighter than anything else on the page. And you don't want to focus my attention so much on that.
And I think also with the FAQs, not to go back to the website, but if you go to the FAQs, we've got a real small column on the FAQs there in the center. So if you're going the subheading on the frequently asked questions, maybe it would be more worthwhile to pull that section next to the FAQ box because it just looks squeezed, like it's not responsive in this section right here. So it just kind of pulls me out of that hierarchy and the flow.
Definitely
okay, I'm
agree. Also, I feel that probably the white text and then this kind of light background most likely fails an accessibility check. There's probably not enough contrast. Well, and then, okay, so jumping into the Figma piece as well. Brand guidelines. Okay, so one issue that I'm going to flag here is that I don't think there's enough contrast between some of these items. So like, for example, when white text is on top of accent, I actually can't see the white text on a lot of these shades. But also like in general, there needs to be a little bit more contrast. The other thing is like every single one of these colors needs to have, and this is just a thing to build out internally over time, like reasons to use it, right? I think when you have a broad palette, but then you don't have guides on like when certain shades are used, it's very easy to start, especially if you have multiple designers collaborating. They start to use the colors in different ways, which leads to like subtle incongruencies that customers do notice. They don't know why it is, but they just have this feeling of like, it's not polished. I can't tell you why, but it's not. And it's like, it oftentimes comes down to those inconsistencies. I would also encourage you to potentially look at some typography options other than Inter. I say that because Inter is a lovely, lovely open source font. But let me go on a very brief tangent on fonts for a moment. Some of you may have heard, and I've actually heard this a couple times over the last few days, which is why I'm bringing this up here, that it's best to go with Google Fonts, because if you go and buy fonts from a font foundry, they might put something in their terms of service and come back to you a year later and sue you and be like, now you owe us like $20,000 a month to use our font or something like that. There is a company in the font industry, and I'm blanking on their name, so I don't want to misquote it, that owns a huge number of font foundries and does this. So if you've been to like myfonts.com, I think they're owned by this company. This is something that you can Google as well. I love going to independent font foundries to find font options. Like a really great one that I love is called Display, DISPLAAY. They're really brilliant independent font foundry. We've used their stuff on a lot of projects. There are some lists out there about independent font foundries. Custom fonts are not as expensive as you may think. For example, this one right here, Bhutan, pretty interesting. How much does it actually cost to get one of these? It costs, let's see. If I want a web license and I think I'm only going to have like 20,000 users, or heck, I don't even know yet, but I'm going to have under 20,000. And I want only the web license, or actually 20,000 I think is the minimum, then the entire set of fonts is 352 euros, but I actually don't even need that. I can pick only the weights I need, and I can bring the cost down to like 150 or something like that. It's not nothing, but it does look so different to users when you've got this kind of like relatively unique brand font. And there's actually so many great independent foundries out there that do great stuff. It instantly like makes a brand look way better in my view. And so it's something to put time into. But I would just say in general, look for independent font foundries that are like proudly independent, because they generally have like much better lease terms or much better license terms, and are supportive of projects using their fonts, not like going after you for no reason. On the logo, I feel like the logo doesn't say anything about what Matto is. I don't really understand the meaning of it. And so I think that's also something where I think that more could potentially be done. Just quickly looking at this, it's really great to use a component library. Component libraries definitely make it much easier to implement applications, and they're very important. At the same time, I would say looking at this component library, I see a lot of places where you've got dark text on a dark background. And I think like that's really hard to read. The other thing is that particular red. The red is kind of dark enough that it enters kind of a blood red territory, which is not great. And doing reds right is difficult, but in general, it's better to make them lighter than darker. That helps kind of, even if you have to go more in a pastel direction, like that generally can make things feel a little bit better. In the interest of time, I'm going to go very, very quickly through this. And I'm going to say that I'm noticing some incongruency between the forest green that I see here, but then the teal that I see across the interface. And with so many things green, everything kind of like fades into each other. So there's not that much visual differentiation between these sections. And in general, you just want more contrast because it makes it easier for people to perceive the differences between sections. The other thing that I would say is that it often doesn't make sense to have two floating blocks or sections like this, right? Like from my perspective, like I would probably rather have a left sidebar that I can use to trade, and then have a right section that has the graph, the pair, and current positions. This in turn also makes mobile responsiveness easier later as well. This I think feels a little bit awkward, right? There's a lot of like open, unused space. If you were to take an approach of having fixed panels as opposed to floating cards, I think it would be much easier to make this work appropriately. I'm noticing on mobile that touch areas are too small for things like these buttons. Every button needs to be like this size. This button, way too small. So this shows to me as well that like there are probably some issues with the existing design system that need to be addressed so that you can create responsive interfaces. Lastly, I'll say this: hamburger menus in general on mobile should never exist. Like I flat out, there's never a reason to have a hamburger menu. On mobile, when you want to do mobile navigation, you want to always do a pinned bottom menu. That is what everybody expects from mobile applications. Ultimately, on desktop, you take that bottom 4 or bottom 5 and you turn it into a left sidebar, or you turn it into a top sidebar. So that's the way to kind of handle responsiveness. But the problem with hamburger menus is people don't click them because they have no way to know what's inside them. Like when you've got
Can I
limited.
interrupt you real quick, Phil? I'm sorry, but would you say no hamburger menu also on, if it's not a mobile app, but just a responsive website for a mobile phone, not an app, would you still take out the hamburger menu? Because I don't think this is an app. I think this is their responsive downflow.
Here's the thing, though. I would argue that this is an app. It is a web app, right? Like the way I think about it is like the landing page is one thing, and I consider that like a separate website. But if it's a web application, like for example, a trading UI, it should be identical in design patterns to an actual app, so that whether it's a website, it's a PWA, or an actual app, it's the same. Because regardless, it's a thing that somebody is using to complete an action on a mobile device. So whether it's in Safari or whether it's installed on the phone itself as a native app, like the design like patterns should not change. There's probably a bunch of other things that I can dive into here, but I think like that key point actually about treating this like an app, even if it's not, I think would be really important. The other thing I'm going to say is like, okay, so it looks like these overlays pop up from the bottom. So they're like kind of like sheets that appear, which is great. I would argue that like this is a good example of making this thing feel like an app, but we've got these like kind of harsh lines here. Again, it becomes unclear like what is clickable, what's not clickable when you have this like kind of like outline button and then you've got a green line above it. Like I'm like, why does there need to be a green line above it, right? Like why not just show me the wallet itself and then disconnect? Like that would be possible to do. Sometimes you use an X to collapse, but other times you use kind of a card kind of drag line to collapse. That feels like it could be a bit inconsistent. But I would, yeah, I'll go back to this idea that the mix of green and teal everywhere makes everything feel not very visually distinct from everything else. And so there's stuff like limit that I could barely see this text. So I think the result is that I would get to this page and I would feel kind of lost about like, where should I look at any given point in time? I'll pull up a quick example. Like if I go to like app.drift.trade, like market, limit, long, short, you can actually scroll down the page, but I feel like, yeah, but again, we get back to like, okay, we've got pinned left navigation, and then you've got this stuff in the center, right? Like I think this still feels a lot more like an app that could be on my computer. Like it feels like I could save this on my computer. I could put the whole Mac like minimize, maximize buttons in the top left corner and just call it an app, right? When I'm here, I was like, I could never mistake this for being an app. It feels like a website. And yeah, I'll pause there.
Can I go in on the tablet real quick? Because what I noticed with the tablet view is there's no side margins. They're so tight that if your user is scrolling, they're going to be inherently clicking on elements or items that could take them into another flow. That's not what they meant to do. So that will be a major usage issue and frustration point for them. So I would add a little bit more of a margin on your sides to allow for the scroll patterns of your users too.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Phil, and thanks, Jeff.
One last thing on the tablet. This is also why a lot of times like you would just not want to do like something on the left and right at the same time. Like I would argue that in this case, you probably want either you want to find a way to condense this chart on the left so you can put it on top of this item of these controls, or you want to put these controls on top. I think at this sort of like 744 pixel width, I think it's actually really difficult to show both at the same time without like stacking them personally. Okay, I'll pause. Sorry.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. So much input. I'm very happy about your time, and we will implement all of these tips. Thanks.
All right, Phil, there's 2 more on the list. We've already hit an hour. How are you doing on time? Can we fit the other 2 in? Can we zoom through them quickly? How's your evening going?
I think we can go for it. I'm just going to send a quick message over to my team and say, okay. So let's do.
Do we have Eduardo?
Oh, I've actually got this open already. Here we go. So to just refresh on the project itself, HiMambo is an onboarding and crypto education app for the underbanked and debanked citizens of the Global South, disguised as a sustainable tourism app. Interesting.
Well,
Okay.
he didn't really give me a copy, so I said it for him. But if you want to actually chime in on HiMambo since you're here real quick.
Yes, happy to. Real experiences, real sustainability, sustainable travel. Well, this feels like kind of duplicative. Like I can like it feels like it's the same thing all over again. So you can see these packages. You can see the UN SDGs that connects to, popular destinations, travel sustainably. You pick them. You go to login. You can then choose to like pay with crypto. Okay, so you've got each of these different pieces. I think that one thing that I'm going to flag is that these pages appear to be designed as pages and not components. And so what do I mean by that? Well, if you look at like the example of Mato here, right, you can see the designs themselves, but you also see the design system. You see all the different components that can get reused across that application into different parts of the interface. And the reason this is really important is that when engineering goes to actually build the product, right, they are going to take these components, build them first, and then assemble them like Lego blocks, right, into the final page. So if this is not really clear, you're going to run into a lot of implementation problems down the road, and it ends up spending a lot more time to build than you might expect. When these are designed as pages without components, it's unclear to me how, for example, I would make a version of this that was mobile responsive. And even then, it becomes unclear at what point do I need to make it work on tablet breakpoints? At what point do I need to make it work on mobile breakpoints? Like all of that. So you end up running into a problem. Like when I started doing web design like 10 years ago, I was using Photoshop and Illustrator, which is what I think most people were, I don't know, 10 years ago or longer than that. And we would have to, and it would be very difficult to design pages like this because as designers, we would create visuals based on what we wanted to exist, send it to engineers who would promptly tell us that is impossible. And then we would just go back and forth over and over again. These days with Figma, there's tools like auto layout where you can create containers and then have things automatically resize. You can define basically CSS values in Figma and then have them kind of apply to different components. As a result, whenever you're developing stuff like this, like if it's too difficult to come up with this stuff independently and to create those design systems, one thing I definitely recommend is to just use a UI kit, buy one or use a free one in the Figma community that has that stuff already done for you. So that way, you know that you're covered and all you got to do is then assemble those parts. It may compromise some of the brand direction a little bit, but it'll make it way easier to build. I guess like I don't have that much additional feedback because I think that like it makes sense that you would build a marketplace where people can like find these experiences, pay with crypto. That's awesome. I feel like the crypto component of this potentially on the side of the person providing these experiences might be one, the ability to record on chain that an experience like supported like the SDGs in some way. And two, I think it's probably for the like tour operator, right? Build tools that enable them to like reinvest a portion of everything that they make in DeFi protocols, for example, or give them the ability to like take payment in USDC via digital dollars and then convert to their currency only what they need. But there's a whole set of other interfaces that I think you'd have to build in order to like make that clear to operators on that side. I think that would be my general feedback.
Can I ask you real quick on the UN sustainability icons? I suggested just using the icon and taking off the number in the text because it was so much to look at. And I know that's probably pedantic and a small detail, but do you think we should leave them fully as they are because of the recognizable, or do you think it is too much?
So I actually think that in general, I don't think the SDGs are that recognizable to people. Like, but I that's more of a personal opinion. I may be wrong. I recognize them. I think that I think that potentially you can make it so that maybe you create minimal versions of the icons for each of them, and then you hover over them, and then it like has a tooltip that then shows what that is. That might be better. I'm in favor of removing the actual stuff because like there's no way that you could read this, right? Like actually at 100%, if I like assume that this is what my screen looks like, I cannot read. Yeah, decent work in economic growth, impossible. Also, if the point of this is to find experiences that align with the UN SDGs, at no point on this landing page do you say that. And also, I would expect that rather than seeing like sample packages, that I might want to explore them by the SDGs themselves. I might want to see a list of all of them and then make that choice. That story needs to be told. You can't just like give me experiences that might be relevant to me. You have to like also give me more context as to what makes this different. What makes this different versus going on Klook and doing a similar search. Okay, the last thing.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man. Last thing is going to be Zelio. No description, which is fine. I'll figure it out. Transfer stables to any phone number with one click. Love that. That is very clear. I see 2 login buttons, but I'm assuming that there is some active construction going on here, so won't be too harsh on that. Helios DevNet. It's got a light mode too. Okay. See, this is actually what I was talking about before. Is this using ShadCN or is this using like what framework are you using for the front end?
Do we have Zelio in the room with us, or is he on the way?
Might not be in the room, but basically this looks like it was built with someone else's pre-built components off of like a UI kit, and that is not a bad thing. Like if that means that you get to polish faster, then like that's not a bad thing. Login. This might be a little tricky for me to test. That's the only issue is like I'm worried. I can't like pick up my phone right now, so I wouldn't be able to like actually get the OTP unless somebody wants to give me their OTP.
We can always have somebody there at Build Station test it out and give some feedback. We do have 2 mentors in the room there since Zelio isn't up with us. From what you can tell, I know you said it looks like a pre-built component set, but is there any other feedback other than maybe the 2 login is a little bit redundant?
What I would say is that in general, whenever somebody clicks something, you want them to have a clear idea of what is going to happen next after they click it. And so right now, when I click login, I don't know what that login screen is going to be. I don't know that it's going to ask me for my phone number. It should say login with phone. I think that this is also a page where you should have more information about like what Zelio actually lets you do. Like saying transfer stables to any phone number with one click, show me a screenshot of the interface. Give me an idea of the features that I can expect to see. Stuff like that. Like there's an opportunity here to like, give me more context on after I authenticate, what is going to come next? What is the process going to be like after I authenticate? Am I going to need to KYC? That's one question that would be on my mind. If so, is it going to support my country? If not, is there going to be any issue there? So I think there could be a little more here done to like make it clear to me what, because like even right now that I'm trying to like give feedback, I don't really know what's coming next without actually onboarding, and like I kind of should. So I think that would be my key feedback.
Awesome. Phil, this has been so helpful. It's been so great. My students have had so many questions from your feedback. It's really helped them as well. I have one in my class who's doing RWAs on real estate. So tons of questions came up from him. I know the comments in my Telegram and the private comments over here have been rolling away from BuildStation. We've got both of the last project in. Did either of you have a question real quick before we go, since you're both back? Yeah, perfect. Unmute yourself and ask away.
Wait,
So
can you hear me now?
yeah, this is the Mambo AI. So we
Yeah,
have a question back to
correct.
that.
So we do have one question about that. So as you see, the design that we have done so far is basically the product itself. You know, as a user,
Yeah.
you can log in and basically look for experiences, whatever. But the question that we have is like, should we put that as our home, let's say, for our website, or like should we design a page where we're just presenting the product to the public to tell them what it is, or should we just leave the product itself as the actual website? Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. So sort of like if it's a marketplace, should we display the
Right.
marketplace when you hit the homepage versus like, I do think that you should display the marketplace. I definitely think that's true. But I think that you've got to find a way to weave in more than just the hero section, a better explanation of how it works. Maybe it is that you have hero followed by search, followed by featured, followed by how it works. So how it works is still like just below the fold. But what I would say is that I actually just feel like remove the hero entirely if you're going to do that, pull it out, have just search at top, one line of featured, condense it a little bit more, and then, because if somebody sees something relevant to them, then great, right? And then right after, jump into a period explaining what it is and the concept. And then you can introduce more content again. And if somebody's authenticated, if somebody's logged in, then just remove those explanatory sections when someone is logged in from that page. And there you go. But you got to make sure that I get a little bit, because like the reason, there are multiple reasons that you want those listings to be available unauthenticated. Search is definitely one of them. You don't want everything hidden behind effectively a login wall. You want to give me an ability, if I already am kind of bought in, to get to where I need to go quickly. But you also, if I don't know what this thing is, you need to give me within the first 5 or 6 seconds enough context for me to say, at the very least, interesting, I want to learn more. Interesting, I want to explore it.
Right.
Okay, thank
you
you
very much.
All right, Phil, since you are one of the breakout judges and also the face and company behind the amazing graphics that we're all seeing, what is your top piece of advice for anyone entering their project? If you could just give one simple piece of advice.
One piece of advice.
I always like to end with a hard question.
Yes, always. That's been very consistent, but great. The biggest piece of advice that I would say, it comes back to across sessions like this, like I can offer a ton of feedback and I can say, do this, do this, do this. Mm-hmm. But the way that I learned as a designer in the first place was testing stuff, seeing if it works, and learning the lessons from that and using that to make improvements. Like it was looking at brands and websites and saying, that resonates with me, why is that? That resonates with other people, why is that? There's parts of design that professional designers who've honed this skill for many years do very well, especially visual design. I think visual design and brand design in particular are two things that like, it just takes a long time to do. But I think UX and product design are things that founders can get a really good knack for. And we've worked on so many projects. I think a very good example of this would be Drip. The Drip co-founders both really get design. Like, they didn't come to us because they're like, we don't know what to do. They came to us being like, we very much know the stuff we want to do. We want help doing it, right? And I think it's great for founders to hone in on that. So the key point that I would say is to get good at design and to succeed in hackathons like this and projects like this, test your stuff and get qualitative feedback all the time. Put your landing pages in front of people and ask them to explain back to you what the product is. The first 5 times you do it, they're going to say something back to you and be like, I don't know how the hell you took that away from my landing page. Do it 20 times, 30 times, 40 times. And then eventually you're going to start anticipating this stuff yourself. As you're in the process of building these pages out and designing these pages, you will develop an intuition for these things. And like, you will be able to get 80% of the way there, 70% of the way there. And that will be good enough, right? To get your product real traction and get it out there. So I don't think that teams do this sort of qualitative user research enough. Go to other people at your super team, go to your friends, go to random people, show them what you're building, and don't ask them, do I like it? Don't ask them if they like it or not. Don't ask them like if they would use it or not. Ask them to simply repeat back to you, what are you seeing? Why might you want to use this? And see if what they reflect back to you is what you intended them to hear and understand.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's great advice, because you're in the room there at BuildStation. Ask people to run through the prototypes with you. I'm also on the mentorship list at BuildStation, so if you want some of my time, they can give you my Calendly list. And last but not least, we have your handle on the screen, but do you just want to remind us of Airfoil, where people can find you, and anything else that you want to close us down?
Yeah, I'm at Phil Hedayatnia on X and on Telegram, and that's the stuff that I use the most. So please feel free to reach out to me there. But for everyone competing at the hackathon, best of luck. One of my favorite parts about the Solana community is how many projects that have ultimately done really well in the space have come out of hackathons and have come from the grassroots. I think like it's you know, I love the degree to which the concept of Silicon Valley has globalized and expanded over the past, like, you know, decade and a half, 2 decades. And I think that like a huge part of that has been the success of programs like this. So good luck, Godspeed, and looking forward to reviewing everything.
Great. Well, thank you so much for giving us all of your time today. Please enjoy Kuala Lumpur, head out to Jalanalur, eat some food for me, and I'm sure I'll see you again on a future episode.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
All right. Goodbye, Lynn, and goodbye, Phil.